Today we're looking at dangling and misplaced modifiers. This connects with my other videos on clauses, really, more than anything else, and where it should help you with some punctuation, and it should avoid, I would like you to avoid ambiguity, and that's what we're dealing with today. Misplaced modifiers. When you put a modifier in the wrong place, it can make the sentence funny and ambiguous, confusing. And 1, 2 and 3 are misplaced modifiers. 4, 5 and 6 are dangling modifiers, which are slightly different. So if we look at sentence number 1, they announced he had been shot on live TV. Now, my question is this. He was the object of this sentence. Was he murdered on live TV, or was he shot on live TV? Or did they announce on live TV that he had been shot? It's confusing. It's ambiguous. So to make this sentence correct, we need to change it. We need to put on live TV here. They announced on live TV he had been shot. Otherwise, it sounds like he had been shot on live TV. It may be understood in that way. So try and avoid ambiguity. Try and avoid putting modifiers like on live TV away from the verb or clause or noun which they modify. They've got to be close to that noun, or you get very ambiguous sentences like number 1. Number 2 is the same. An old guy with a large dog called Alan lives there. Now, who's called Alan? Is the old guy called Alan, or is the large dog called Alan? It's really very difficult to see. There's a lot of ambiguity in this sentence, so we need to clean the sentence up. Now, there are a few ways we could do this. We could say Alan and use an apositive modifier, like in the previous sentence. Alan, an old guy. This is non-essential information. We already know who it is. So Alan, an old guy, lives there with a large dog. That's probably the best way to put it. Lives there with a large dog. And then there's no confusion. There's no ambiguity. Yeah? Okay, number 3. I met my wife covered in bandages. Now, who was covered in bandages? Was it my wife or was it me? So again, we need to change this to make it unambiguous. So instead of saying that, we could say something like covered in bandages. Now, this would be the subordinate clause. And so we need a comma. Covered in bandages, comma. If we start with a subordinate clause, always use a comma, comma. I met my wife, main clause, independent clause. And then it's clear that this is the subject. This is what's being modified by this clause. Covered in bandages refers to I. Who is covered in bandages? I. And this is the rule for dangling modifiers. When you have a participle clause and then a comma, that noun, or maybe it could be before the participle clause, but it must be touching the noun which it modifies. Okay, and if it's not touching the noun which it modifies, if we have a different word here, like my wife, and that's incorrect, then it's called a dangling modifier, which is slightly different from a misplaced modifier. Here, the modifier was just put in the wrong position. But down here, you'll see that in some sentences, there is no noun here which is being modified by the preceding clause. So have a look at number 4. Having met him before, his name was familiar. Now, my question is, who are we referring to here? We're not referring to his name. It's not his name having met him before. That would be ridiculous. It's me. I'm talking about me having met him before. So this is incorrect. This is a dangling modifier. We need to get rid of that, especially his name. That's the incorrect part, his name, because the noun is not referring to the clause previous. We need having met him before. I knew his name. Yeah, I knew his name. We must have I, because I is the subject of the preceding subordinate clause of the participle phrase. Okay, so it's got to be I here. Here's another example. Flying high above the trees, it was impossible to catch the butterfly. Now, it was impossible. This is not what was flying high above the trees. So this is wrong. we need to say the butterfly was impossible to catch. We need to start with the butterfly because it's the butterfly that was flying high above the trees. Flying high above the trees, the butterfly was impossible to catch. Okay? And then that one, number 5, is correct. Let's now have a look at number 6. While eating my breakfast, the postman delivered a letter. Now you might think that this sounds okay, but it's certainly not okay, because actually to me and to many other English speakers, it sounds like the postman was eating my breakfast. So we've got to get rid of postman. While eating my breakfast, I noticed the postman delivered a letter, or I saw the postman deliver a letter, something like that. I saw the postman deliver a letter. Okay, so that's the problem with the dangling modifiers. Always make sure that this noun, when it's touching a participle clause, it has to be the noun which is the subject of the participle clause, whatever that subject may be. Okay, if you have any questions about misplaced or dangling modifiers, please put them under the video. I'd be delighted to answer them, and I hope I see you all soon.